So welcome to another episode of the Mind Takeaway podcast.
Welcome.
So today we wanted to explore a topic that comes up quite often on a regular basis, I would say. Would you not say, Mira?
Yeah, I think so.
And we give it the heading of irrational retaliation. I guess the best way we could explain it, and tell me if I'm wrong, Mira, or I've missed something, when we make decisions from a place of anger, urgency, and frustration, and we still have an emotional charge attached to the situation. So those kind of decisions that are often ones we can come to maybe regret, they're definitely ones that will give you learning opportunities if you're willing to be humble and open to the fact that there's definitely something you could learn from. For example, if you get a bit tetchy, and what I mean by that is you get a bit short and hot and heated, and you overreact to a colleague in a meeting, you might be aware of it at the time, you might not, but later on with a bit of reflection, you think, hey, okay, that wasn't so cool. I kind of unloaded on my colleague and I treated them unfairly, and actually had nothing to do with my colleague at all. It was just that I came into the meeting in war mode or battle mode, and I was already pissed off. It could have been you had a previous conversation that didn't go so well, and you take that baggage into the next meeting.
Yeah, you take the emotion forward. It is interesting because I see that as, bringing in unresolved emotions. And it can be, as Peter said, as something as simple as you've been triggered by something, or you had some kind of emotional reaction in the meeting before, or with something else that you were doing before, and without stopping, without reflection, coming into the next meeting and bringing that on. Or it can be some unresolved emotion that you are holding on and bringing it with you, some emotional reaction that you go towards often. And I can see that a lot in leadership roles, and I've seen that with myself, and I can maybe bring in an example of it. I was bringing in lots of unresolved anger, especially being a female leader. When I would perceive that I'm not listened, I would bring in lots of unresolved anger. And it's not that I was. So it's interesting. You don't get angry outwardly, but that affects your decision making. So I would bring the anger into making decisions, and decisions wouldn't be right, or sometimes it would even come about as self-sabotage, because the decisions you've made and actions you've taken, you haven't taken from the rationale, from actually thinking clearly, but you've actually brought them. You did what came out from your unresolved emotion, and for me that sense was from anger. So I would actually stop projects. I would I would stifle them. I would, just because I wasn't thinking clearly. And so being able to see that, being humble enough or being vulnerable enough to allow yourself to see that, can make a big difference in how you make your decision and actions you can take as a leader in the future.
And another practical example is if you're having back-to-back meetings every day of the week, you are not really resetting between meetings, and we call them meeting buffers. So when we work with clients to slow them down and get them more reflective, we get them curious enough to experiment with putting gaps in between all of the meetings that they have. And I know that, as an exception, sometimes that might not be possible. We get that. But if normality is back-to-back meetings with no breaks, no 15, 20-minute buffers in between each meeting, then how can you reset and get clear for the next meeting? And as we probably talked about in previous episodes about focus, it can take at least 15 to 25 minutes to refocus on a new topic. And if you, for example, lost your focus and you need to refocus, you need at least that time to be able to do that. So if you're going from one meeting to another, one project to another, different topics, you're mixing all of the things up. Your brain is being confused. You might not be aware of it, and you might think that you're absolutely smashing your day, your week. But then that's where the awareness comes in to ask for feedback from your colleagues, from your team, because they might have a different take on it. And this is where, vulnerability comes in, because sometimes you're not going to like the answer. But that's a good thing, because then there's learning in there. So when we say meeting buffers, what we're really talking about is 15 minutes. So when you finish the meeting, 15, 20 minutes of literally doing nothing else, reflecting on, okay, how did that go? And also setting an intention for the next meeting. Okay, that was a bit negative. I'm a bit angry. I don't want to take any of that negativity and angriness or urgency into the next meeting. And it sounds so oversimplified, but I can honestly say that try it out, because yes, you should be skeptical like with anything. That's a good thing. That's a good starting point. That's curiosity. But be curious enough to try this, and you'll be actually quite amazed with the results. So what are the solutions to irrational retaliation? So one of the things we explore quite often with clients is the best action, as we talked about before, is really reflection. It's waiting for those strong emotions to get less and to dissipate. And the only way that that can happen is, again, to walk out the room, go outside, take a little break and think, okay, I was angry in there, or I'm really annoyed or irritated, or I have a sense of urgency from this meeting that didn't really have impact. But what am I going to do differently now? And okay, I've thought about it, and just that reflection, just thinking about it, is more than enough for it to actually get less. And as long as it gets less, you're less likely to use that as a mask when you carry into the next thing. So it could be straight into another meeting with 10 people or whatever, or it could be just a one-to-one between you and one of your team, or you and your boss, or something like that. And this is why it's really useful, because if your awareness starts to grow around how your emotions can absolutely, as Mira said before, impact your decision-making power, and you're taking power away from yourself, as Mira said before, that, and yeah, it can be quite often with female leaders, simply because there are more challenges, let's be honest, because of patriarchy and all the other things that we won't go into in this episode. But if you're not feeling safe, if you're angry about your male counterparts and it was quite an aggressive meeting, and you're not aware of the impact that's going to have on your decision making, you end up regressing. You end up not getting involved in the project and being the stakeholder that you can be, or the leader that you owe yourself to be. You end up cancelling people out, so you just ignore them because you're angry and not feeling safe to interact with them. And then you're damaging those relationships, the opposite of cultivating your relationships. And it's only when you slow down and stop and reflect that you can take a step back. And obviously, in hindsight, everything's different. Should have, could have, would have, all of that. But it's not about judgment, because judging yourself, feeling guilty about what you could have or should have done, is only going to stop you from making those good decisions as well. What we're talking about here is just good old honest self-reflection, but with no judgment, nothing on it other than, okay, that didn't go well, or it went really well. What can I learn from that situation? And when I do it next time, what could be different? How could I make that more impactful?
Yeah, and sometimes, sometimes it takes time to dig deep. Sometimes we are not even aware of the emotions that are playing the role. If it's something deep, something that stems from, say, childhood. So in these cases, well, you don't need a therapist, but you need a good coach that is going to be comfortable taking you in and trustworthy relationship, obviously, with that person, that you're going to be comfortable going into digging deep into some things. And trust me, it's going to change your life.
So how do you, sorry, so just to conclude, just a bit of a recap as well. So how do you know you're being irrational and retaliating in your day-to-day work as a leader, as an employee? I mean, you can even apply this to your family and friends. It's really impactful in any part of your life. But how can you actually know that you are being irrational and retaliating? Well, here's a few tips. So you have a sense of urgency. And like we said, if you don't notice that, everything becomes urgent.
Yeah, you kind of lose the sense of what is important, but just there's this feeling that things to have to be done right now.
Yeah, and you can't prioritize. Everything looks like priority number one. You are angry. You know, you're fidgety, you're angry, you're uncomfortable, and you're angry with everyone and everything in the world. Everything looks like it's a problem and the whole world is against you. And obviously, you know, if you watch the news on that day when you've got that sense of angriness, things are going to absolutely escalate. You are frustrated as well. It's similar to angriness, but actually different. You know, someone mildly annoys you in a meeting, and then that escalates from mild frustration into something even more toxic. You struggle to listen, and this is a really good indicator. If you don't want to listen, or you're struggling to keep quiet and reflective in a meeting and just listen to your colleagues, then that can be a really strong indicator that something's off.
Yeah, and also that listen, it doesn't mean that you're talking a lot. It can just mean that you're thinking about something else, that you're judgmental towards whatever the other person is saying, that you are judgmental towards that person, that you are, you know, kind of talking to them in your head. So it doesn't mean, so you can outwardly look really quiet, but inside there is a lot going on, so you're actually not hearing.
And then the last thing is, Mira touched on it before about having good people, trusted coaches, a mentor, just friends, family, people you can talk to and be honest with. Having people around you that you can trust to tell you the truth when you're in these states can make all the difference. And, you know, it's not easy because sometimes we don't want to hear that we're being frustrated or we've got, you know, we're being blindsided by a sense of urgency. So be nice to these people because, yes, you will be uncomfortable and you might react to them as well. So you've got to be careful not to damage that relationship, because if people are brave enough to give you that feedback in the first place, these are absolute allies. These are gold. These people you should not annoy too much and keep them on your side, because I can honestly say, I mean, Mira, I've definitely had situations like that where Mira's gave me loving feedback and said, hey, you know, I don't think that sense of urgency has really helped with the client. And I've been like, who are you to tell me that? So you just got to be careful around that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it's really just, I don't think there's a person that doesn't experience these things. It's just really the honesty with ourselves to explore it and see how it plays the role, what are our triggers, and how can we be better. And if you're not doing it, you know, sometimes you can say, you know, why would I do it? Why my colleague doesn't do it, or why my co-founder doesn't do it? And you're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself, because it is helping you to make better decisions for yourself, for your life.
So yes, I hope this episode has been useful. I hope it gives you some things to reflect on and to be curious about. But like anything that we explore with you in these episodes, be curious enough to go, you know, is that really true what Peter and Mira are talking about? Let's go out and try that. Let's experiment with it and report back.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.